In this video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Panasonic S1H mirrorless camera. This is the very first mirrorless camera to be approved by Netflix for creating original content. This is not meant to be a technical review video. There are plenty of technical review articles and videos out there if you want to check out all of the various technical specs about the S1H. This is really just meant to be a video showcasing what the S1H can do right out of the box. If you're curious about what the footage looks like and how it behaves in a run and gun shooting scenario, this video is going to talk about some of those things. I'm also just going to talk about some of the features of the S1H that I personally find to be amazing and are the reasons that I purchased the camera. These opinions are based on just a few days of me shooting on the camera, and they may change in the future, or I may have more to add to this. And so perhaps I'll do a follow-up after I've been shooting on the camera for a month or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll the test footage, but stick around because I'm gonna get into all the things that I think make the S1H an amazing mirrorless camera for filmmakers. I'm going to jump right into some of the things that I think make the S1H an amazing camera for filmmakers, and I'll touch on a few things that might deter some people from picking one up for themselves. So the first thing is absolutely the form factor. If you're involved in any run and gun style shooting, this camera is just so impossibly small for the quality that it puts out. And what I think is so awesome about that is if you're used to shooting on any style of cinema camera, you know that not only does it get tiring to carry around a large camera all day long, but if you're trying to run around and remain as inconspicuous as possible, this camera truly does have the exact same form factor as a traditional DSLR camera. So if anyone sees you out and about with a camera this size, they're not going to think that you're shooting any professional style video. But when you look at the quality that the camera does put out, honestly, side by side with a lot of bigger cameras, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But to that point, if you are in a situation where you have to carry the camera around all day long, it is small enough where that's not going to become a cumbersome effort. If you have this thing outfitted with a battery grip and 2 SD cards, you could literally carry this thing around and film all day long without having to dump footage, without having to change a battery. And that to me is extremely valuable. So the next thing I want to talk about are the camera codecs. So in the test footage that you saw, I really just focused on the 6K 24 frames a second and the 4K 60 frames a second, because in my opinion, those two 16:9 codecs are probably going to be the workhorse codecs for me. That may not be the case for some people, but I find those to be the most useful. And so I was kind of putting those two codecs through their paces. But the S1H does have, I think, somewhere around like 30 different codecs, and it has all these variations of those same formats. Having the amount of options that it gives you is refreshing, because if you are, let's say, shooting with one lens, like in this case, I shot all of that footage on a 16-35 zoom lens. Depending on the codec that you're using, it could be full frame or it could be super 35mm, and that will actually change the crop of the sensor, and so it'll change the look of the lens, giving you more variety for shooting with that one lens without the need to change to frame things differently. Beyond that, the codecs that the S1H does offer are incredibly efficient. If you're filming, let's say, in 6K at 24 frames a second, you can literally film for an hour straight, or 2 hours if you have 2 memory cards in there. And that'll only give you about 200 gigabytes of footage, which is like incredible when you compare that to some of the raw formats. And if you know that if you're filming 6K raw for 2 hours straight, I mean, you're talking about terabytes of footage at that point. But with this camera, if you were filming for 2 hours straight at 6K, you're looking at probably about 200 gigabytes of footage. And that to me is just incredible, that you can film for that long at 6K with good dynamic range on just 2 small SD cards. So that brings me to the point of storage. So the camera does have 2 slots for SD cards. I'm recording on 2 128 gigabyte cards. The test footage that you saw was shot over the course of, I'd say, about 4 hours. I filmed about an hour and a half of footage during that time. And I only filled up one of those memory cards and only killed one battery. So if you were filming all day, you would really only need 2 128 gig cards, and I think that that would more than handle the volume of footage that you're going to be shooting. Another incredible thing about the S1H is its ability to record video for as long as you need to roll. Classically, a lot of the mirrorless cameras couldn't record for more than, say, 20 or 30 minutes at a time, but this camera is equipped with internal cooling, and it allows it to just keep rolling until either your battery dies or you've filled up your memory card. And depending on the situation you're in, especially if you're, let's say, a documentary filmmaker or something like that, and you need to keep rolling, that could be extremely valuable for you. Another thing that I really enjoyed about shooting on this camera is all of the test footage that you saw earlier was shot in the vlog format. That's Panasonic's flat picture profile, and the vlog profile it comes installed on the S1H, and it gives you 14 plus stops of dynamic range, which is just completely insane and gives you so much room when you're grading. So even though the codecs that you're offered in 6K are only 420 instead of 422, shooting in vlog gives you so much space to grade that honestly, I didn't feel like I was losing any information in the highlights or in the shadows. Even when I was shooting in direct sunlight or really harsh lighting conditions, the exposure remained really clean and really flexible in post. So getting to a couple of the negatives for the camera, a lot of people have been talking about the poor focus on the S1H, and I do think it does leave a lot to be desired in terms of focusability and focus speed. Sometimes I would find myself in a situation where I wanted to quickly focus on something that was happening in front of me, and the camera is just kind of searching and searching and searching for that focus, and it never really lands on the right spot. However, I think for people that aren't really relying on autofocus continuously, that this isn't so much of a problem. So for instance, if you're using a lot of manual focus lenses, or if you're using a lot of deep focus, high aperture stuff, this isn't going to be so much of an issue for you. I personally didn't find the focus to be totally unusable. Is it better than, let's say, Canon's focus system? No, it's definitely not. I've shot on a lot of Canon cameras, and yes, the focus system on those cameras is a lot nicer, I do think, however, when you're weighing the focus issue with the S1H, you have to consider all the features that this camera comes bundled with for the price point that it's at. And when looking at those things and looking at the price of the camera, which comes in at around $4,000, I feel the focus system is perfectly adequate. Maybe after shooting with the camera for a longer period of time, I'll feel differently. I know that I've read Panasonic is working on a new firmware update that is going to change the way the focus system works on the camera. So only time will tell how the focus system on the Panasonics will improve in the near future. The last thing, I personally don't see this as being a real negative, but this might bother some people who are used to shooting RAW. The S1H does not have the ability to shoot any RAW codecs. As I said earlier, I do feel like the Vlog picture profile has an incredible amount of dynamic range. If you are used to having the bit depth of a RAW file type, then that may be a huge drawback for you. However, there are a lot of rumors about being able to record raw file types to an external recorder in the near future. So I'll be curious to check that out whenever it happens, and I'll definitely post more information about that when it becomes available. Hopefully, if you're looking at purchasing the S1H or using it in an upcoming production, you found this video helpful in some way. Please make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you'll receive updates anytime I post a new video about improving your photography or filmmaking skills. I'll see you guys next time.